There was a street like it in most neighborhoods. You knew the way without thinking, the crack in the sidewalk near the hardware store, the elm roots that had lifted the pavement into a low ridge, the chain-link fence with the loose post that rang when the wind caught it. You weren't walking fast. You already knew where you were going. The shop sat at the end of the block, narrow, set back just slightly, as if it had decided not to compete. The window held a small arrangement, a tin robot, a boxed game with illustrated cover art, a stuffed bear leaning against the glass at an angle that suggested care. The sign above was hand-lettered. The paint had gone a little soft at the edges. None of that mattered. You already had your face close to the glass. When you pushed open the door, there was a bell on a spring above it, a light, bright sound that announced you to no one in particular and to everyone at once. And then, the outside world just stopped. The traffic sounds, the wind, whatever argument was happening down the block, gone. What replaced it was something quieter. Wooden floors, the hum of a fluorescent light, the smell of cardboard and sawdust, and something faintly metallic, paint or lacquer or something you never identified and never needed to. The shelves ran floor to ceiling on both sides of a narrow aisle. A price tag hung from a shelf edge, $3.49, written in ballpoint pen, the ink slightly faded. Under the glass counter, small die-cast cars arranged in a row, a yo-yo still on its card, a Viewmaster reel with a landscape visible on the label. You didn't touch anything right away. You looked first. That was the right order. At the counter, hands rested on worn wood. No ring, no watch, just the hands and a notepad and a pen and the mechanical cash register with its round keys and satisfying rows. On the wall behind, a handwritten list. Tommy, train set. Sarah, art kit. A cream-colored rotary telephone on a shelf, slightly dusty, tilted just off horizontal. The person behind the counter knew things. Not everything, just the things that mattered in this particular radius of the world. They remembered that you'd been saving up. They knew what you'd come in 3 weeks ago and looked at, and then put back down. They said things like, "That one just came in. I thought of you." 7 words. You carried them for years after, without quite knowing you were carrying them. The shelves held a mountain lake in a jigsaw box, a construction set in a flat tin, screws and beams visible through a cellophane window. A yo-yo on its card, a paint-by-number set with brushes included, a tin tea service, a bag of marbles, the light moving through them in amber and green, a model kit, an airplane, unbuilt, the box illustration showing it already in the air. Each thing waited on its shelf with a certain patience. You were in no rush. The shop had no particular interest in rushing you.
There was a ritual to it. You didn't just arrive. You prepared. A coin purse opened on a kitchen table. The coins counted out and counted again. A note in your own handwriting. Birthday money. $5. You'd already decided what you wanted before you left the house, and you'd already reconsidered it twice on the walk over. The planning was part of the thing. The anticipation had its own texture. The shop window and morning light looked different than it did in the afternoon, brighter, a little more formal, and your bicycle leaned against the outside wall while you looked before going in just for a moment at what was there. The shop knew the neighborhood the way a person knows a neighborhood. Not from data, not from a pattern tracked across thousands of transactions, from years of paying attention, from watching the same kids grow up from 6 to 12 and understanding what they were ready for. There was a kind of intelligence in that. We didn't have a word for it at the time. A paper bag folded over at the top, the item inside unseen. The wrapping was part of the gift. A ribbon tied on a box, deliberate and unhurried. You understood that what was being handed to you was not just a thing, but a judgment made in your favor. At the end of the year, the window changed. Warm lights were strung inside the display case. Tinsel caught the light at the edges. A hand-lettered card. Thank you. See you next year. The snow settled on the exterior sill, or the last of the autumn leaves, depending on the year. The mechanical cash register sat where it always had. The shelves held what they always held. There was a last time you went. You didn't know it was the last time. You almost never do. You walked past one day and noticed that the sign was different. The window held something else. Whatever had replaced it was fine, probably. It was just something else. And the feeling you had standing there wasn't grief exactly. It was closer to the feeling of finding an old note in a coat pocket. Small, familiar, a little warm. You'd been inside that shop. It had known you were coming. That had been real. What stays is not complicated. A wooden shelf in a present-day house with a few small things arranged on it, not a collection, not a display, just a keeping. The weight of a small die-cast car in a hand, the specific satisfaction of a thing made to last. A child learns something in a place like that. They learn what it feels like to be taken seriously by a grown-up who had no reason to but chose to anyway. That is not a small thing. It turns out to be one of the things you carry.